Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton, Reimer, and Paul Quinney, and today is report card day. The season has wrapped up. Playoff hockey is underway, but Ottawa is not a participant this year, to the surprise of few. And yeah, so today we're just going to give out report cards. We're going to give a letter grade to each player, how we thought that they did, based on expectations. So an A for Artem Zub is different than an A for Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stutzle, just based on the expectations of them, how you expected them to perform. Um, Before we get into it, how you guys doing? Dayton, how are you?
Good. Yeah. Um, I'm full in on draft mode, so doing
Good.
lots of research on players that might never get drafted. It's a lot of fun. I really
That's
like
good.
it.
You've
Yeah.
been doing a lot of work on the Substack for like OHL, QMJHL, WHL. You've been doing a lot of good stuff on there, and it's
Oh,
great to
thank
see.
you.
So
Yeah.
go check it out if
Q-
you haven't.
yeah. QMJHL is
Um,
coming out soon, along with my next stop in my WHL journey, if you haven't caught the first one.
that's such a fun series that you're doing. I love it. Make sure to go check out Dayton Substack content. Paul, how are you doing?
Well, good, except I'm not getting much golf in these days here in Ottawa. It's just too bloody cold. I think this winter when I was in Mexico, I became Mexican, and I don't know. This weather is you can't golf in this weather.
Now, I'm waiting to get on the green for my first time too. Um, all right, so let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the pretty easy one. Let's go with goaltending. Jonas Korpisalo, 21, 26, and 4 record, an 890 save percentage. Played the majority of the games, 55 games. Not great. Dayton, why don't you give us a grade for Jonas Korpisalo?
I don't know if an F is fair, but like a D, right? Like as low as you can go without failing. Because I don't think he was given the appropriate support, but he also didn't do anything with the little support he got. So I'm thinking like a D, D minus.
Okay, Paul?
I'm a hard marker. I gave him an F, and he's just not a starting goaltender. I said that was the case before the start of last season. He proved me right. He just didn't meet expectations in any sense of the word. F.
All right, I can't argue with either of those. He's sitting right around the D to the F category for sure. Paul Anton Forsberg. He had a 15, 12, and 0 record, and again 890 save percentage, matching Jonas Korpisalo. What do you give him for the season?
Ditto, a big fat F. He was supposed to have bounced back this season, and no, that didn't happen.
Okay, Dayton.
Um, yeah, no, I think no, no, I'm gonna give him the same. D minus. I'm not gonna be as harsh for the same
Fair
reasons.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, he's not a
Um,
starter, so
no, he's not, and he was injured for a little bit. He only played, I think it was 30 games, so not a whole bunch of, not the season we expected to see from Forsberg.
But I will add this. I forget which interview it was, but Steos, he said, "Look, those two goaltenders are not as bad as everyone is saying." So I don't know what that means.
I think it just means that they are better than they both played this year, and I think that that's 100% true. They're neither of them are superstar goaltenders by any mean, but they are much better than 890 goaltenders. All right, let's move on to defense. Let's start with Jacob Chychrun. He had 14 goals, 27 points, 41 games, and the most impressive part of his season, 82 games played. He had a completely healthy season, which not many people expected. So, Paul, what's your grade for Jacob Chychrun?
I'll give him a C. Look, I love the points. I think he was fifth or sixth on the team. Great, but he had a minus 30 plus minus 30. That's got to be one of the worst in the league. And it looked at times like he didn't want to be in Ottawa or didn't know what he was doing here. And you know what? He said as much in an interview last week with the press. So I don't know what you do with him, but he didn't live up to expectations, certainly.
Yeah, okay. Dayton Chychrun.
Yeah, I think a C is fair. He didn't like his points are great, but he didn't really rise to the occasion of being that top two-way guy. By the way, his minus 30 is 13th worst in the league,
Okay.
which actually putting a number on it makes it feel so much worse. I don't know about you guys, but that's woof. I know plus minus is not a great stat, but that's like at
And he
one
was
point
not the
it's not a
only player that
coincidence.
was minus 30 on the Senators this season. He joins
Yeah,
Dominic Kubalik in that category.
we'll get to him later.
Yeah. Um,
Well, you're gonna make that quiz question out of that. That's one quiz question I might have won.
we'll do some quizzes in the off season, stuff like that. And maybe some league wide stuff too. Um, all right, Jake Sanderson. He had 10 goals, 28 assists for 38 points this season. And he was +8 on the season. So Dayton, what's your letter grade for him?
I think a B. It's not where he should be, but it is where he is now, and I think that's fine. Yeah, I'm not mad at that performance.
Okay, Paul.
Hey, you know what? I'll give him an A minus. He's become the anchor of the decor with the Senators, and compared to last year, I think he took a step forward. He's progressing, and that's more than I can say for a lot of the Senators this year.
Yeah, I agree. I would go with A minus as well. He didn't have as I might go B plus. He didn't have as good of a season as many were hoping, just taking that bigger next step. But he was in a much bigger role and did just as good this year as he did last year. And so him taking that big step in terms of his role, I think, gives me a B plus. Thomas Chabot. He had 9 goals, 21 assists for 30 points, but only in 51 games. So he was injured quite a bit this season. That's a really good pace for points. Paul, what's your letter grade for Thomas Chabot?
I'd give him a C, C plus. This is the year that he was supposed to have been unchained. He had Chychrun in town. Sanderson was taking a big step up, and he wasn't supposed to have been doing the grueling minutes that they called on him to do in previous seasons, and he was to have improved, and he really didn't. I know he's been injured, but I think if you prorated his performance on an 82 game basis, I don't think you'd see an improvement.
Okay, Dayton.
I'm gonna go same with Sanderson, B. It's not where he should be. The injuries definitely played a part. And I think he had to play a lot more defense than he expected to, instead of having that freedom that he was promised. But still, that's 30 points, 51 games. What is that, about a 50, 60 point pace? That's where you expect him to be pretty much. So I'm not mad, and I've been critical of him over the year. So B, I think, is fair.
Yeah, I'm with Dayton on this one. I'm going to go B or B plus. He had a fine season. Obviously, some defensive collapses at times, but it's an Ottawa Senators problem, not necessarily a Thomas Chabot problem. So that's where I sit with that. Artem Zub, Dayton.
Um, I think he is what he is, and he played what he is. So I'm going to give him an A. That's what Zub does.
Fair enough. He did exactly what was expected of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. He was Artem Zub this year. Paul, what do you say?
I agree with that grading. Dayton just gave him, good, dependable Zub. He's, I looked at his stats. His plus, was he a +8? His hits, most of any D man on the team. Blocked shots, I believe he was the most. And hey, he produced a few points. So solid D man. Love him.
Uh, Paul will stick with you. Eric Brandstrom.
Ah, I'll give him a C plus. He is adequate, but I don't. His play this year, I don't see where he fits in with the team long term. So he's not the brilliant addition that Dorion touted him to be.
So you're saying that acquiring Eric Brandstrom shouldn't have been his proudest day as GM?
No, no, no. But hey, he's a good pitch man. He's the Donald Trump of the NHL. It's
That's a fantastic comparison. I love that. That's great. Dayton, what do you give Brandstrom?
I Yeah, no, I think like a C plus, kind of right where Paul is. His 20 points, I think, is one of his better paces. He's taken steps. He's a good two-way guy now. where's he going to fit? He's kind of played himself out of a place, and also the Senators haven't given him a chance. And it's frustrating to see that this player could have been really great, and he was forced to be a defensive defenseman. And man, I could rant about that forever.
We'll save that for another day. But
Yeah.
I'm going to give my thoughts on Brandstrom because I strongly differ from you two. I'm going to give him an A minus. I think that for a third pairing defenseman that didn't see any power play time, I mean, other than with some injuries, but everyone gets to see power play time with injuries, 20 points in 76 games, 77 games. He did fantastic. Like, that's a really good pace for a third pair defenseman with no power play time. And Dayton, you're right. He was unfairly put in a role for a defensive defenseman, but he did really good. He blocks a lot of shots, very underratedly. The only issue with him defensively is moving guys in front of the net, and that's just because of his size. There's nothing he can do about that. I think that he did fantastic in the role he was given, especially for the expectations that were put on him in that role, because people look at him, smaller offensive defenseman, he's going to fail in that third pair position. I think he did absolutely fantastic in that role. I don't think that he should be the option. I think there are better options, but given the expectations of what Erik Brandstrom was going to provide in that role, I think he smashed it out of the park.
Your description really reminded me of Chris Russell.
Yes.
Another smaller guy who blocked a ton of shots and was a defensive defenseman. In junior, he had a ton of points, but yeah.
That's a really good comparison for what I think Erik Brandstrom can be. I think Chris Russell is a bit tougher, like just more, he will punch you in the face. Erik Brandstrom won't. But I really like that comparison. Last defenseman we're going to talk about. No, sorry, we have two. Jacob Bernard Docker. Dayton.
JBD. I think I'm going to be a little less harsh on him because he was never going to be a top 4 pairing guy. And so 14 points in 72 games, that's pretty good. I'm going to give him a B. That's a strong starting for a defensive defenseman who's going to anchor your bottom pairing.
Yeah, I agree. Paul?
I give him a B minus. I agree with what Dayton said. And I also note that he's up there in terms of block shots. His hits actually stand out among the D-corps. So, yeah.
I think he has what it takes to be a really good number 5 or 6 defenseman, or number 4 with a really good balance on that pair. I think he can be a really good shutdown right-handed defenseman. So, last defenseman on our list, Travis Hamonic. Paul, what did you think of his season?
Well, I'm not a teacher, enough to some of the technical terms. Maybe you two guys could help me out. But what do they grade you when you don't show up for the exam? Course not completed. I don't know. I mean,
DNF.
Yeah, that's what I give him. I mean, what do you do? He's injured all the time. Did he do 48 games? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he played 48. He played all of them until he got hurt, and Jacques Martin took over and said, "You know what? We're better without you." And he didn't play any more games.
Yeah. Well,
Dayton, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is going to be my first F. He's just not what this team needs, and thank goodness Martin took him out. That was a good decision on his part. Yeah, such a misguided addition. And maybe you can argue for leadership, but he never really was a leader before. Like, he was an assistant captain once or twice in his entire career. I don't know.
Worth noting that Steve Stais said that they don't plan on exercising any buyouts, and Hamonic has a full no move clause. I think Travis Hamonic is back next year.
Sure. As the 7th guy.
Or 8th or 9th.
Somewhere there.
All right, let's move on to the forwards. Brady Tkachuk, Captain Brady. What did you think of his season, Dayton? He had 37 goals, 37 assists for 74 points, sorry. What did you think of his season? Like, those stats are pretty good. There were hot and cold streaks. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm going to go A minus.
Okay.
Like, that is what Captain Brady is 37 goals is great. Like he should be a 40 goal scorer, maybe a 50 in the future, but safely a 40. And I think that's exactly where he should be. 70 to 80 points. Perfect. He's going to lead you in penalty minutes. I don't think it was perfect. Like you said, hot and cold. We saw a little bit of immaturity still. I expect more, but not a lot more.
He was well over double anybody else in penalty minutes this season on Ottawa.
Yeah.
Mark Kastelic was second with 63. Brady Tkachuk had 134.
Yeah, and that's a different problem that I actually wrote an article about. So
yes. Paul, what do you give Brady?
I'll give him a B plus. You know, he's heart and soul of the team, warrior. I get all that, leader. But he, as Dayton points out, he needs to grow into the role of captain, get control of his emotions. There's just too many trips to Crazy Town this year. He's got to pick his battles. And when it comes to points, last year he had 83 points. This year he had 74. Now, is that all on him, or is part of that on the team? But he didn't match last year's production.
Fair enough. I'm right there with you guys. B plus, A minus. He just needs to let cooler heads prevail sometimes, and I think that's the only real flaw in his game this season. Next up, Tim Stutzle, 18 goals, 52 assists, 70 points, 1 power play goal. That's one stat that I'm going to throw in there. That's insane to me. He did reveal that he played almost the whole season with a wrist injury. Should he have been playing if he had a wrist injury? I don't know. But he didn't look fantastic this season. But I mean, 70 points in 75 games for somebody that had a wrist injury all season and did not look good. That's still really good. Like, you have a really special player in that case. Paul, what do you give Tim Stutzle for the season?
I'll give him a C plus. You pointed out last year it was 90 points. This year it's 70, but it's almost a point a game. Pretty good for a guy who's injured. But, he got more assists than he did goals this year. And I don't think he could adjust to Martin's defensive style. I think he's struggling. That said, though, he is young, and as he gets older and fills out, he may stabilize. But he really needs to turn it around next year.
Yeah, I agree. Next year is going to be a really big year for him. He has the $8.35 million cap hit. He lived up to it last year. I would say he lived up to it this year. That contract is so good. 70 points in 75 games for just over 8.25. I'll take that. No problem. Dayton, what do you give him?
Yeah, C or C plus. I don't think it's a hot take to say that Tim Stutzle is the most skilled player on the Senators. He is incredibly intelligent. He has great offensive instincts, and he is a decent, like, defensively minded player. Like, he's not a shutdown forward or anything like that. But he has a really good awareness of the game, and he can, break up plays and create all of those, why am I blanking on the word? Turnovers. Late. 70 points in 75 games is not enough. You are paying $8 million, I think, for a point per game minimum. And 90 points, that's exactly where he should be. Almost 40 goals. Yes, that's great. I wouldn't be mad if he got up to 50 goals, and I think he has the potential to do that. This was kind of a disappointing year for him, and I expected a lot more from him. 70 points, I'm not going to complain a lot, but I will a little. That's not what you can have with an $8 million player.
Fair enough. And it is worth noting that because of his wrist, his shot wasn't nearly as good. His shooting percentage was under 10%. It was 9.4 this year. So expect that to go up. Like it can't stick around at 9.4%. Even if it goes up 5%, like that's 20, 26, 27 goals. And then we're not even having a conversation about how bad his season was.
Yeah. I'd go as far to say that Jacques Martin should not have asked him to play the defensive system. I think that was a problem. He's not that kind of guy.
Yeah. I can get behind that. I don't agree, but that's a justifiable argument. Drake Batherson, 28 goals, 38 points, or 38 assists again, sorry. 66 points in 82 games. Dayton.
I don't know. I think I'm still kind of around that C, maybe a low B, B minus. Um, I'd like him to be a little higher, but 60 points is nothing to get mad at. He played all the games, which was good. Improved his plus minus, which is good. Improved his goals. It's like a career high for goals. But he showed that unbelievable pace before he got injured in 21-22. And I'm still hoping that that's the Batherson that the Senators get. Almost a point per game guy. 60 points isn't terrible. And for 5 million, like that's fine. So like, yeah, I'll go up to a B minus.
Fair enough. And I think that's the hard part of the conversation. You know, he has so much more in him than 66 points, but he also makes under $5 million. Like, yeah, it's really interesting to see where people's expectations are with somebody like Drake Batherson.
Not
Paul,
mad,
where are you
but
at?
You know what? I gave him a B plus. I liked watching him this year. He stepped up when others faltered. I think I've got this right. He was number three on the team in points, second
Yep.
in goals. Have I got that right?
Yep.
So,
Second in goals.
the whole team, well, in the words of Bart Simpson, I didn't think it was physically possible, but they actually suck and blow at the same time this year, right? And despite all of that, Batherson was one of the guys that came through.
Fair enough. Yeah. Uh, Claude Giroux, very interesting how his season went. So 64 points in 82 games. Paul, was that good enough? What do you put him at?
I'll give Claude a B. I mean, he took a step back in terms of points production this year relative to last year, but then again, that could have been a tire fire in which he was playing this year.
Yeah, I think, well, when you look at everybody on the team having a reduction in points, it's hard to just point out one guy and say, oh, well, how come you didn't have as good of a season? It was a systemic issue. Um, yeah. Dayton.
I'm gonna go an A. He's 36 years old. And for a hockey player, that's getting near to the end of your career, right? So 64 points, 82 games, 21 goals, which was third on the team. I don't know if you saw me wince before, but I was just realizing that the Senators had three guys over 20 goals. That's it. And
And
that's
they have 6 or 7 guys that have the potential to score 20 goals.
yep.
And yet you only have 3.
So I think Giroux was perfectly where he should have been. Unfortunately, the team around him was hot garbage. So that's,
I will throw in that Tarasenko would have had 20 if he stuck around. So that's
maybe.
a little bit better. We had 17 in 57 games. So
Maybe.
Matthew Joseph, 11 goals, 35 points in 72 games. He was a bit of a surprise this season. People wanted him gone. And at the start of the season, everybody was like, I'm sorry, please stay. $2.95 million cap hit for 35 points and a pretty reliable two-way guy. Lots of speed. What do you think of his season, Dayton?
Yeah, I'll go another A. Same reason as Giroux. That's kind of where you expect him to be for a third line guy. I don't know if you can justify him being a second line guy. He had a really good start. He is just replacing Nick Paul though, and Nick Paul is a 35-point guy. So nothing. I don't know why they traded for each other. They're basically the same player, but that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, I agree. He's exactly what he was supposed to be. Paul, what do you think?
I'd give him an A minus. I mean, it was a nice rebound from last year. Before the season, everybody was screaming for his head and trade him and make room for Pinto. And he was a pleasant surprise and a very valuable part of the offense with his speed. And he looked like he cared in contrast to a few other players.
One really big improvement was his even strength scoring. If I recall correctly, last year he did not have an even strength goal. He had 3 goals on the season, 2 on the power play, 1 shorthanded. I could be wrong on that. Fact checkers will find me. But this year he had 10 even strength goals, which is fantastic. And then the 24 assists, which is great as well. So for a third line defensive winger, he fantastic. Happy to see him stick around. Josh Norris, 50 games played, 16 goals, 30 points. Paul, where do you sit with Josh Norris and grading his season?
I give him a D. Basically, he flopped, right? It just looked like he didn't care at times. I'm not sure he'll be the player they expected him to be when they handed him out what was it, an 8-year contract for 7.95 million a year. Um, and to make matters worse, now that he's injured, you really can't do anything with him. But even if he hadn't been injured, I don't know that they could have done anything with him with that kind of contract.
Yeah, the Senators are in a really tough position with him this summer. Dayton, what do you think of Josh Norris this year?
100% D. That's for $8 million, he's getting you 30 points. That's a failure. And under 20 goals, yeah, he was injured, sure, but he's always injured. This guy's an injury bug. And the Senators are going to have to make some really, really tough decisions about what to do with him if he can't play a full season. This is as big of a mess as you can get without being an absolute wash. I like this. Dominic Kubalik is an F, right? We can get that out of the way.
Yes.
This is as close as you can get to that without an easy choice, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you look at Josh Norris's season. He had 16 goals in 50 games. He had one stretch that he had 7 goals in 9 games. So for the rest of his season, that's 9 goals in 41 games. That's an 18-goal pace if you take out that little chunk of games. And I know, yes, you can take out a chunk of everybody's season and say, oh, well, now look at his stats. But a 9-game stretch to inflate his stats really saved him from being an F this season. That's just to put it simply. Shane Pinto, 41 games. He played every game he was allowed to play this year, 27 points, so 54-point pace on the season. Really good numbers for somebody you want to be your third-line center. But is a 54 pace a good enough season for somebody who was the first-line center the whole time he was back? Dayton?
Yeah, I don't know if you can think of him as a first-line center, and that would, I think, put him as like a C. But if you think of him as a second or third-line center, B to an A-. When he was there, he was good. And the problem was he wasn't there for most of it. Next season will be big. That he needs to prove. He is, well, can he take over from Josh Norris, essentially? If he can, great. You found Josh Norris's replacement, essentially. If he can't, I don't know. Third line is good enough, I guess. So, yeah, we'll go for like a B+.
Hey, Paul, what do you think?
You know what? I'd go a little higher. I'd give it an A-. And, the reason you pointed out, Jacob is in the 41 games that he could play. He was on track for 54 points. And hey, that would have put him at 5th spot on the team. And that's a big step up from his rookie year. So, yeah, Senators should be excited about him. He's one of the guys that might have a shot at being who they thought he would be, in contrast to guys like Norris and others.
All right. Ridley Gregg. Not sure everybody expected him to be a full-time NHLer this year. He was kind of on the fringe of should he spend another half a season in Belleville? Should he be in Ottawa all year? There was a bit of a debate, but he showed up in Ottawa, 72 games played, 26 points. The production wasn't really there, but I think that he had a fantastic season for what he's supposed to be. Paul, where do you rate him?
I gave him B+. He's a gutsy, hard-nosed player. If the Senators could clone him, if only they could clone him, they need more of that from him. And hey, I love his slap shot, wicked shot. So
I agree. That was fun. Dayton, where do you put Ridley Gregg?
A+.
Is that just because of the slap shot?
No, that definitely got him some bonus points. But this is exactly the kid that the Senators want on their team. He is very skilled, right? He had 13 goals, which was one of the higher totals on the Senators. He has incredible energy. He's physical. He is not afraid to spit in the enemy's eye. He is like a light Brady Tkachuk. And that's what this team is trying to do, or at least it should do. Brady Tkachuk is the face of the franchise. You need guys who work well with him. Ridley Gregg is one of those guys. If, like Paul said, you could clone him, I think the Senators would have made the playoffs. This is exactly the kind of player that you want. And are you telling me that he's going to get even better because this is his rookie season? Fantastic. He's already doing everything that he needs to on the third line. Let's see where this goes. I think this is just the perfect fit for him.
I love it. I almost think of him as like in the future, he's going to be like a Brandon Tanev, that kind of player.
Sure.
Yeah. This Parker Kelly, 80 goals. No, 80 games, 8 goals, 18 points. There's a lot of 8s in there. Trip me up. Dayton, what do you think?
Parker Kelly is almost what the Senators need, and he kind of took a step forward and a step back this year. Like his points were good, or at least better than they have been. 18 is pretty decent. Only 30 penalty minutes. This is an energy guy. Where is he messing stuff up? Where's he, throwing some almost dirty little hits? I want guys to play more on the edge, and I think Parker didn't quite do that. So for those reasons, I'm going to give him B minus. He's a depth guy, and I think he fits really well on this team, but he needs to prove that he fits on this team.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I give him a C, basically for reasons Dayton already explained. He wasn't the acerbic little spark plug that he was in previous years, and that's the edge in his game. He needs to get back to that.
I think you guys are insane. Parker Kelly for me is an A+. I think that he had an incredible season, especially under Jacques Martin. I think he did play with all that energy. He did start producing a lot more than he ever has. I love the way that Parker Kelly played from January on. So maybe that's just me, but I think he's an A+. This one, maybe not going to take much explanation. Paul, where do you put Dominic Kubalik?
F. Yep. No debate about it. Yeah, what a huge moment.
Yeah, big time. Dayton, any rebuttal there?
No, I respect the attempt to add him because he did do quite well in Detroit. He had, 20, 30 goals?
Yeah.
20 goals in Detroit. He had a 30-goal season.
Yeah, 20 goals, that's what the Senators needed. They needed another 20-goal scorer. And he crashed and burned. He was a liability every time he stepped on the ice. So massive F.
All right. Last one on the main roster that we're going to go through. Mark Kastelik. Where do you put him on the season, Dayton?
Well, I think I would put him right where I had Parker Kelly. He missed a few games, which wasn't great, but yeah, kind of took a bit of a step back, but also he's playing the depth role that he needs to. He's kind of asserted himself as one of the, guys that you can rely on the fourth line. So I don't mind that he only had 10 points in 63 games. I'd like that a little higher. So B minus.
Right. Paul?
Yeah. Penalty minutes were also really low. Would have liked those higher.
Yeah, I'd tag him with a C plus. Good, solid journeyman, nothing spectacular. He's a depth player and adequate for that purpose, but really no progression. I didn't display any upside potential. He is what he is.
All right. The last couple names on this list, we're just gonna go rapid fire. We don't need much of an explanation. Boris Tkachuk. Paul?
I'll give him a B. Pleasant surprise.
Okay, Dayton?
Yeah, same. I hope he stays.
Zach McEwen.
Starting with me, F. I think he was a terrible addition.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Rourke Chartier, who actually played 37 games, which I didn't realize. Only 3 points, though. Paul, what do you think?
Nah, C, adequate. Did what he's supposed to do, but he's not worth much more than the league minimum. I think that's what he's making.
I agree. Yeah. Dayton.
I'd go B. I love him, but didn't really stick around. So I hope he does. To me, he's a Derek Brassard, but I don't know if he stays.
Okay. Derek Brassard from last year, not Derek Brassard from 6 years ago. Just to be clear.
Yes.
Not the same player.
Yeah. Derek Brassard had, all heart, not the Derek Brassard who was expected to lead the first line.
Right. Angus Crookshank. Dayton.
B. He's only succeeded, and I want him to do more, and next season should be great.
Okay, Paul.
B+, high energy, and he impressed. Like to see more.
Okay, and last player with over 10 games, who actually had 20 games, which I didn't realize, was Yuri Schmeichel. 2 points, 20 games. Paul, where do you rank him?
C+.
Okay, Dayton.
I think a C. They didn't give him a fair shot. I hope he stays, but I doubt if he does.
I would have liked to see him get some time on that second line after Tarasenko was traded.
Yeah.
Because he's capable of being that fourth line guy, but he also really has it in him to be that top six guy. Like he has maybe not production over a whole season, but he has that style that could really balance out a top six.
Yeah.
Give him a shot, I think.
I think they didn't treat him fairly. I kind of buried him in the minors for way too long and then brought him up and shoved him in a fourth role. He's a veteran of international competition. Like, give him that chance, and they didn't, and I think that sucks.
I would like to see Nicholas Matenpalo get a bit more of a shot too. We only saw him for 4 games this season. Which did he deserve more of a shot? I don't know.
Probably
I didn't
not.
watch enough Belleville. Probably not. But at least give it to him. Give him 7 games once the season's kind of a lost cause instead of calling up. Max Enskanet, I loved seeing him play. Tyler Clevin loved seeing him play. I think Matenpalo deserved a call up over them just to at least get a couple games in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's gonna wrap things up for today. It's officially off season. We'll have some draft stuff coming up. We'll have some fun trivia quizzes, stuff like that coming up in the off season. Just some more laid back episodes, and we're gonna figure some stuff out to get more content out in the summer. So if you enjoyed this episode of the Senators Roundtable, leave a like, and hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.